Hi everyone, I am Juliet Hyland. I am a category romance writer. I have written 25 books for Harlequin, Mills and Boon. My 25th actually just went to my editor this morning. Fingers crossed it comes back with minimal edits. So, what do I want to talk about today? Today I want to talk about the question that I get asked not infrequently as a romance author that is honestly one of my favorite ever. And that is, does romance need a happily ever after? It is not my favorite question. I hate answering this question. I think it should be very, very easy and very simple to know. And the answer is just a simple yes. If you are writing a romance novel, if you are marketing it as a romance, then you must have a happily ever after. You are doing an explicit contract with you're doing an implicit contract, not explicit. Although, depending on what kind of romance you write, it might be explicit. But you're making a contract with your reader that the story that they are reading is going to end in a happily ever after or a happy for now, commonly referred to as HEA or HFN. This is true whether you are writing a traditional heteronormative book, whether one female, one male character. It is if you are writing a male lead, if you are writing a sapphic romance, if you are writing a why choose, where you have one female and her 5 boyfriends. At the end of that book, all 5 boyfriends and that woman are going to be very happy with the life that they have chosen as a unit. That is what you are guaranteeing your reader when you give them a romance book. Why does your romance have to have a happily ever after? Why is it that is an expectation, and that if you don't do it and you market your story as a romance, you will have backlash from your readers? The answer is genre conventions. Every genre that you pick up, if you're writing genre fiction, has a convention or an expectation from its readers. You would never ask a horror author, hey, but where is my horror that's has no fear or scare or, is not scary at all? Now, there are subgenres of horror that are less scary than other genres of horror. But if you are picking up a horror book, you are picking it up because you want to feel that, heart tingling, kind of racy feeling. You want to be scared, but you want to be scared in a place like your home or the library or wherever you are at that is safe. You want to read something that's going to give you kind of that jump scare without having to actually experience that jump scare in real life, because that is not fun. If you are picking up science fiction, you are guaranteeing the reader that science is what is going to probably cause the problems in the world that you have built, but also fix the problems in the world that you have built. If you write this entire science fiction space opera, and at the end of it, you find out that everything has been done and developed because a wizard is pulling everything together and making everything work perfectly, okay, well, now you've entered magic in, and magic is not a component of science fiction. And so you've destroyed the convention, and your science fiction readers are going to be very, very mad at you. If you write a mystery novel and you don't solve the mystery, you are going to have mystery readers. You've made a promise to them. You've promised them that you're going to have a mystery, whether it is somebody has died, which that's what a lot of them are, or there has been a major theft or something. You have promised them that you are going to start out with something happening, and your main character, whether that is the hardened PI, whether that is the librarian who has just stuck her nose into the wrong place, whether that is the witch who is suddenly solving the mystery of what has happened to all of the ingredients that the coven needs in order to keep the earth spinning, or whatever it is. You have made a promise that the mystery will happen and that by the end of the book, it will be solved. Now, does that mean that your librarian will never again find a dead body at the edge of her steps at the library? No, you can absolutely have a series that goes on with that type of characters, but each of those books is going to have crime, completion at the end. That's just how it has to work in order for it to fit that convention. Romance is the same. In order to fit the convention of romance, the promise you are making is that 2 people or 6 people or 3 people or whatever convention you are making, or aliens or whoever, it doesn't matter. However many main characters you have, when you throw them together, they are going to be happy at the end of that story together. And it seems to be that it is romance that is always kind of getting this question. I don't hear it for horror. And I don't hear anyone saying, okay, well, but where is my science fiction with out the science fiction? I don't want to read about that. So why romance? Why is it that it's always, it seems, romance? You can see here I'm putting a couple of tweets up. These are just a couple, and I have taken away the screen names and everything because I don't want anyone going after these individuals for what they're saying. But let's take the Titanic. The Titanic is a love story that ends in tragedy. Jack, although it shouldn't have, there was enough room, I think we can all agree, for him to get up on that door with Rose. But she doesn't let him up, and he drowns. So, not happily ever after, not a romance. But it is a love story that is centered around the drowning deaths of hundreds of people. Uncomfortable, right? That uncomfortable should tell you it's probably not a romance story. This person I think is asking in good faith and wanting to know. This second person is not asking in good faith. This is one of the things why I think it does seem to kind of always be romance. I think there is a prevalence within groups of individuals, whether it's authors or certain types of readers or things, to look down on romance, to kind of think of it as, it's fluff. It doesn't matter. Nothing hard-hitting is ever discussed in romance. That's not true. There are many romances out there that are what I would consider fluff. And let me tell you what, I enjoy reading fluff. I write fluff. This book that I wrote here that is coming out in January, this is pure fluff. I own the fact that this is fluff. However, it also deals with the fact that his father never accepted him. He was never good enough. And what he wanted most of all was to be an artist. But what he was raised to be was a CEO. Does that mean that he's not valid because he was raised to be a CEO and what he truly wants to be as an artist? No. And that is something that he comes to realize throughout the book. But it is not super deep. It is not something that is going to make the reader have to think super hard, but it's in there. And you do see that with romances, and you will see very deep topics that are discussed with them. A lot of times in historical romances, particularly Regency romances, a lot of that is class warfare. A lot of your billionaire romances is class warfare. That is kind of the discussion. Cinderella, at the heart of its story, is technically a class warfare story. These are things that are being discussed within your stories that make each romance different and fun and things to look at. But I do think because it gets kind of that, Hallmarky treatment, it's almost Christmas time, so people are watching all the Hallmark Christmas movies, which I love. There's nothing wrong with them. But I think because they don't feel gritty, they don't feel dirty in that sense of it's, harsh and everything is bleak and dark. I think because of that, it can seem like they just don't belong in hard-hitting literature, which is ironic because you have most of Jane Austen was contemporary romance over time. She didn't write historical romance. We read Pride and Prejudice now as a historical, but it's not. It's contemporary. It was a contemporary romance of its time. No one would argue that book is fluff at this point. And I think the thing that was true then with Jane Austen is true today, and that is the fact that happily ever afters are radical. As this author, tweet puts it over here, having the audacity to love someone, whoever it is that you choose to love, and to love them well, and to love them despite the fact that you are both going to get old and you are going to get wrinkly and your bodies are not going to look the same as they did when you first married or got together or things like that. That's radical. It is love itself for most of human history is radical. The idea that you can fall in love with a person, that there's not a contract that has to be developed, that you're not marrying for societal wealth. All of those things have been radical throughout human history, and they are still radical. Having a 50-50 partnership with your partner is something that in many places is still considered radical. If you watch the "we listen and we don't judge" trend, wow, the number of partners on that trend for TikTok that are saying things that are truly hurtful, and I think they're doing it on purpose, is shocking. That's not, when we watch those, we are uncomfortable because that's not what love is supposed to be like. That's not what a partnership should look like. Some of the pranking videos that go on with your partner, some of them are fun, and if both parties are consenting and happy with the pranks that are being played, that's great. But far too many of them are pranks where one of the partners is destroying something that the other partner loves. If you love something, your partner does not destroy it. My husband is very into football and into like memorabilia and things like that. I would never intentionally destroy any of the things that he loves. And he would not look at all of these books behind me all of it and destroy it because he knows how important that is for me. So I think that's one of those things when you see it, why it feels like happily ever after is kind of this like radical feeling still in 2024 heading into 2025. But that doesn't mean that your happily ever after has to be what people consider traditional. You do not have to end your story with walking down the aisle and getting married and having a baby and riding off into the sunset that way. It is perfectly fine for your hero and heroine or your main characters, whoever they are, to decide that they are just going to live their lives by their own design. So this story that I have here, Reawakened at the South Pole, she is technically unable to have children, but she also doesn't want them. So the fact that she has not been able to have children is not an issue for her personally. But the end of the story, there is no what I like to call magic sperm. She doesn't meet the right person and suddenly become capable of having a baby. That's not what happens. She's perfectly content to have dogs, which is what she does get at the very end with her hero. They get a townhome and a puppy. That's happily ever after. And it's happily ever after for them. But there is no baby carriage that's ever coming their way. These are older heroines. And an older heroine and an older hero. They have spent their entire life just focused on their career. They are perfectly happy, both of them, being focused on their careers. When this story ends, they are still very focused on their careers. They're just focused on helping each other with their careers. There is no baby that's coming out of this book. There is no, we're going to ride off into the sunset and suddenly one of us is going to stay home. And no, these are two very, very powerful surgeons who are very much, well, he's a surgeon, she's an anesthesiologist, who are very focused on their work. And they're still that way at the end of the story. And that's okay, because that's a happily ever after for them. I think it is perfectly fine. Well, not think, I know for a fact. It's perfectly fine to write a story that ends with your characters being happily ever after in whatever that means for your characters. That does not mean that you have to suddenly see the girl who's like, I'm never getting married, I'm never getting married, I'm never getting married, suddenly standing at the altar at the end of the story in a white dress and walking down the aisle. It's honestly one of the things about the Big Bang Theory that kind of upset me at the end of the story, because Penny gets pregnant. Penny has never wanted a child. It's something that is seen throughout the entire arc of the story. And suddenly, in the last season, the last couple of episodes, she gets pregnant and she doesn't freak out about it. She doesn't get upset. Like, it's weird how she goes from not wanting to have a baby to just basically being like, I guess we're having a baby. No, you can have characters that just say, I am going to be child-free by choice. We're not doing marriage and a baby, all of those things. That does not mean that your story is not ending happily ever after. But if you are writing a romance story, you do have to have HEAs at the end, or HFNs. It's just a requirement. And I know for a fact that me saying this and putting out this video, along with the hundreds of other videos that are probably out there about this, it's not going to change any of the conversation. I know for a fact that it's going to ramp up again in February, because it always ramps up in February. But if you are looking to write a romance story, just know that your romance book and your romance readers, the good news is your readers expect it. It's what they want. Give your readers what they want to pay you for. They want to read about individuals getting together and being happy at the end of the day. So, yes, the answer to the question is yes. If you're writing romance, it absolutely has to have an HEA.